Josephine Reynolds, hailed as the first female firefighter back in the early 80s. It's Norfolk Fire Service, and yeah, I was lucky enough to go on a journey with them, and now I've been lucky enough to be asked to write my story, which generates lots of conversations now, because between the 80s and now, we feel that there's actually very little that seems to have changed. There's still a lot of hurdles, particularly for, you know, people who are who aren't, you know, who are a little bit out of the norm. That's what I would say. So yeah, that's me.
Good morning, Jo, and thank you for joining us today from Cambodia and the wonders of technology. I mean, of course, you and I have met before some time ago in Sussex, where you presented as being the first woman firefighter in the British Fire Service since it was enacted in 1947. And it was a pleasure to meet you then, and it's an even bigger pleasure to meet you here today, because I do recall that we were asked to talk about stories about ourselves, and it was really quite uncomfortable because we had to say things that were uncomfortable for us. That was the point. So I'm so glad I went to East Sussex that day. But in terms of your book, I've read your book with a lot of interest because of the work that I do for Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service. And today we're celebrating International Women's Day, and so you are that person in terms of fire. So when you sort of started your journey sort of back in Wales, and then you moved around quite a lot, you were always somewhat of a rebellious individual from what I could gather, looking for excitement and wanting to change the world. So you saw an advert for a firefighter in Norfolk, and it was something that the chief of Norfolk at that time did. And instead of having a 12-week training course for firefighters, 12-week, he extended it to 15 months, which was rather progressive at the time. And you applied, and I don't think you were aware that you were the only woman, and I certainly don't think he was. And he asked you a question, and if I just read that question verbatim, he asked you, let me just find it. Why on earth should we invest our time and money in you when later on in life you might have, shall we say, different priorities? And I'd like if you can remember what you responded to when he said that, because I think we all suspect he might be thinking, well, she might go off and have a baby. So what did you say? Do you remember?
Yes, I do. I was actually quite shocked. It's an interview, isn't it? And you're like, oh, what are they going to, number one, it's like an interview situation, it's horrific, isn't it? All interviews, and no one likes an interview. And there you are. And I just said to him, I don't know where it came from. I just said, if you train me properly, I don't think any of it will be a problem. And yeah, that seemed did the trick. Oh, goodness.
I think that
but it's
So in that sort of course of doing that piece of work, i.e. training to be a firefighter, you made enormous personal sacrifices, and you were also told on your first day at training school, in that environment, you were neither going to be male or female. Now, I think today we would recognise, and I know the sentiment, we'll treat everybody the same, but of course we're not the same. So I just wondered, did it resonate that, did you think, well, I want to be treated as me, as Jo, as a woman, or did you think, oh, well, I'll be one of the boys then and we'll all get on together?
I think I was just so you're kind of a bit scared of the instructors, aren't you? It's like it's a bit of a scary machine, the fire brigade. You know, there's the odd face that's familiar and cheerful, but most of the time it's it's very military, actually, isn't it? You know, based on the Royal Navy. So there's an element of the fact that you think, okay, I'm just going to go along with whatever they tell me to do. I didn't think I had the kind of, ability to challenge it or think, oh no, I just want to be me, treat me like a woman. No, there's none of that. I just thought, okay, I'll just do what you tell me to do. That was the kind of character. It was the culture then. It really was. Yeah, it really was the culture.
And you know, on those first days, you made lots of friends, and I recall reading about how you had to do cross country every morning, and you were always coming sort of behind the men, and you felt sort of a bit defeated. But there was a particular individual that was a trainer that fully supported you in the way that he encouraged you and sort of sounded brutal, but built your confidence. Well, that's how it reads to me.
Yeah, very much so, because you know how it is. If you don't think you're under scrutiny, you've got to get fit, and it's okay. It's a slow process with them as well. 15 months, you know, running every morning, weight training, learning about the equipment. But yes, Paul Holmes, he was very kind, actually. Yeah, he was a kind person. I guess when I look back, he was quite young, really, compared to the majority of the men in the brigade. So he had maybe a kind of a kind of gentler touch with us, and a bit kind of, we would go everywhere with him. He took us everywhere in that, you know, minibus, wherever we were going. And he was kind of like, you know, a bit of a good shepherd, I guess. Yeah. Kind of just making sure we'd kind of hold it together at the right place at the right time. And, you know, but again, it was a big responsibility for him because that course was a new one there, 15 months of a, you know, new course. And that's quite a big responsibility to give a young man, isn't it? You know, here you go. And he's got that extra pressure of the press being there when I'm around. And yeah, not an easy task for him, to be honest, in hindsight. But yeah, he was a good mentor for us. Yeah, for me particularly.
I was also interested. There was something that they used to say to you all. I don't know whether they said it every day, but they certainly said it. And they'd come into your sort of your briefing every morning, and they called all of you. They'd say something like, and I can just see it and imagine it. Good morning, ladies.
Yes, is it?
What I felt from that was that ladies, it was a derogatory term that they were saying that all of you, because they were, let's remember, you were neither male or female in that term, that all of you were weak. And so they called you ladies as a derogatory term. How did the men react to that, do you think? Did
guys,
they say derogatory?
Oh, I mean, they were just the same as me, you know. It's like, this is your, you know, you're doing your training. You've just got to, you know, whatever they're going to throw at us, we've got to just go along with it. And it just seems so normal, actually. You know, they were just, they were at training school, and yeah, it was quite not nasty, but heavy. And you know, there's the intention, isn't there? It's like, you know, you're going to do what we train you to do in order to become the best firefighter you can be. And along the way, you know, they're not going to take any nonsense from us, and especially young things. It's like, stop that.
A rebellious Josephine on the watch.
Yeah.
Can you bring us sort of past those punishing 15 months?
Yeah.
And it transpired, of course, that you were then this woman on this watch, and the media started to get hold of that. And there was a point where that was quite exciting, I suppose, and you were invited onto a BBC TV programme that was being fronted by Chris Tarrant. Now, for those of us in the room those people in the room, not me, that might not know who Chris Tarrant is or was, he was a big celebrity at the time. He was very funny. Tis was, I remember, and he was asked to interview you, and you went along to the BBC to be interviewed by the great Chris Tarrant, and he said to you, he said words to the effect of, people are asking. He said, you know, all of us are asking, how can you as a woman be strong enough to do what is essentially a man's job? Now, can you tell us today what it was you did when he asked that question? You didn't answer it, you did something.
Yeah, I just picked him up and put him over my shoulder and carried him out the studio. Just like, take that, Chris Tarrant, enough, you know. Yeah, we've got rights, us girls, we can do it. It's like the whole thing about being strong enough. If you're doing your training, you know, and you know how strong you are, what you need to do, and the techniques as well. It's like, yeah, no, I'm not having that.
Do you remember what happened with you and Chris Tarrant after you carried him out of the studio? Was he shocked? Was the studio shocked?
I guess they probably just thought, oh, it's, you know, he probably winds people up all the time. They probably he's like, thank somebody sorted him out. It's that time.
Was he? Do you remember?
No, I think he laughed actually. Yeah, it was funny. It was a funny thing. Oh, what a day.
But what followed that funny thing and the attention getting was your awareness that things were quite sinister in other parts of the world, and things became quite sinister. I mean, goodness knows how it would have been with social media as it is today, but there were women firefighting in the United States in particular, in other parts of the world, that were having a very, very difficult time. And as we know, that hasn't necessarily gone away, but it seemed to have a big impact on you as you were put into this sort of spotlight as something that was quite extraordinary. But you as a person are still just Joe, and you're doing something that you'd always wanted to do, and you'd achieved that excellence in Norfolk with your colleagues. So could you tell us a little bit about your realization of that you were not considered the norm?
Yeah, I think it was everything actually. Right from the start, when people come along to take the interviews at the start of the training, it's like, will she make it through? It's like, will she? Then 4 weeks in, it's like, will she make it through? The rest at the end of the training, the cameras come back, it's everyone again. It's you know, well, she's made it through training. Now, will she make it through on the station? Then you're on the station, they turn up again. And so every time it was like, you're kind of continually proving you've got to just be there and just go with the flow of the conversation. Yes, I'm here. Yes. And I'm not choosing to put myself up and say girls can do it. You know, this is just my job. I didn't really have a great, you know, I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone, just do my job without having any problems. But yeah, the whole thing in the States was, yeah, it's quite sad actually. Very sad and dangerous because of how, you know, I think it was New York City at the time were treating their women firefighters, and that made a lot of press. And again, you think, oh wow, you know, a lot of people, they don't know you, and yet they judge you, and they decide that, you know, yes, you can't. Why shouldn't? Why do that? It's like a pat mentality sometimes. It's like, yes, it's all off kilter. It's wrong. It's so wrong. But once it happens, how do you kind of get things back again? Yes, and I had a little hate mail as well, which came through to me at home. And you think, but I'm just, you know, just like me doing my thing. And then it's like you have the attention, you don't necessarily want it. I knew I could do my job at that point. After you passed out and you've been on station a couple of years, you know really well how you're doing. You feel it, don't you? You know if you're in the right place. But yeah, it's like people are very judgmental. As you say, social media now would be absolute killer. I can't imagine. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's a dangerous place. So sadly, of course, we have had cases since you started your career in the early 1980s, but at the moment things are coming to fruition that has always been there but are being recognised and challenged. And I know that you were interviewed by Sky News after the release of Nazir Afzal's report into the Cultural London Fire Brigade. And since then, there has been others that have been exposed. And I think for a lot of us, this isn't a surprise, irrespective of how shocking and appalling these incidents are. So I think that from your perspective, how far have we come I would like to say as a society, but I think that would be a much longer conversation that could go on for weeks. But as a fire sector, and even though you're not in it now and you're working you're sort of out in the Far East, and you do work with women very specifically, which I might like you to touch on a little bit. But how far do you think that we've come from when you started back then, and the good times that you had in your book, of which there are many, there's lots of laughs in the book, and also you were, as you say, sort of that trailblazer, but also you just wanted to do this job. You didn't want to make a point. You just wanted to be a firefighter. So how do you think, after reading Nazir's report, how did that make you feel?
I was just so sad and disappointed, and that I felt it's like tragic for so many people, what people are having to handle, what they're going through. Women, minorities, anyone who's slightly out of the typical mold of the traditional firefighter going back years. It's like they have to find the right place to be. It's not given, is it, anymore? It's like, if you're lucky, that it sounds like you're going to be lucky and you're going to work with great crew on a great watch, but it's very likely you might not. And if you're not, it seems little is being done. And even though there are women, there's a 8-9% women, whatever it is, it's still tiny, and so much needs to be done. But it seems like the conversations have been going on years, but nothing seems to have changed. Nothing's changed, really. There are more women, but things have gone so badly wrong, I think, in the brigades. It's a lot of conversation, lots of words, but no real action for change. And I think that's desperately needed. And seriously, it feels like lip service is being paid.
So if you your sort of voluntary work and your NGO, if you were going to advise the services about how you enact that change and give people a voice, people that are different, that don't fit that mold, that haven't internalized that sort of culture, what would you do if you chose to come back and work with the fire service today? What do you think? How do you think that we could sort of get this conversation so that it's not sort of an adversarial, but it is a collective conversation about difference?
Gosh, it's a good question. I think possibly in the past, it seems like there's a lot of conversation happens, but nothing's changed from people asking for things to happen or making a point of the fact that something's happened to them. So I think people think if they're reporting things, nothing's really changing. The system possibly needs a bit of a shake-up, doesn't it? Somehow, some way. It would appear the reporting of things needs really tightening up and being kind of bulletproof and fireproof and proof, so that anyone who does say, I've got a problem. The problem is as well, watches are small families, aren't they? That's the whole thing, we know. So you have what problem in a watch? Who's going to expose that person if they're their friend? They might, be their running friend and their friend outside of work. They go to barbecues, but if they're working alongside them and they see them bully someone, it's very hard to say, yes, I just saw that. It's very hard, isn't it? It would seem, in the majority of cases, to actually call people out for what's happening when it goes wrong. It's like there just seems to be a lack of action from these events. It would seem.
Yes, it does appear to be that way. But on a more positive note, we have got numerous women that are doing this very successfully, and we've got chief fire officers that are women, and we still do have chief fire officers that are women. So if not me, because I'm much too old and certainly aren't fit enough, but if one of my daughters said to you, hey Joe, I'd like to be a firefighter,
Yeah.
What advice would you give them? Would you encourage it? Would you say, yes, you can do this?
Of course, yeah, 100% I would, because if that's something that somebody would love to do, it is a wonderful job. Most of the time, most of the crews are wonderful. They are great. There's just this odd element, and the problem is that I think they're giving the brigade a really bad name. I mean, the crew I worked with, they were so precious to be with as a family group, as a unit. So I would say to a woman, do join, but also have mentors, maybe more than one mentor, female mentors, male mentors too, that you can go to, who can help you to make sure that things are, safe. You're in a safe and in a great working environment. And then people who've been in the fire service a long time, they know what's good and what's not good, don't they? So if you've got a young woman, she can have a mentor. The mentor can say, actually, maybe this isn't quite right, or have a conversation that things don't have to just be as they are often.
Do you think that the mentor do you think we should prescribe what the mentor is? Should the mentor be another woman? Should the mentor be somebody who doesn't work in fire? Should the mentor be somebody that is a sort of an authority in fire? Or do you think that it shouldn't be prescriptive, and whoever can mentor is individual to the person that they're mentoring, and vice versa?
That's a really good question, which I don't really know the answer to be honest. I mean, if you have someone who's in fire, they understand in fire. But the problem is that the fire brigade essentially is a bit behind society, it would seem. So if you have external mentors who understand how the fire brigade works, that might well be better. Because they can say, actually, no, it's not right that they're doing that to you.
Yes, yeah. I would like us to sort of, I am very interested in the work that you're doing now. If you did want to promote because you've been on a tremendous journey from Wales and London and Norfolk. And I've certainly changed the world, and I know that you continue to do that, working with women, and you've had your own business, and from China, and then you moved out to Thailand and now Cambodia. So I think that it would be really nice if, as a woman trailblazer, if that's how you want to call it, and I don't think that comes with that phrase, but you've continued to do that, and I think as you sit amongst fellow women, and we are all very different, I just think it would be really good for you to tell us a little bit about your work, and also that we remember, as you tell us, that your starting point in the world of work was as a firefighter, and that giving you the grounding to be able to go on and be the successful community-based entrepreneur that you certainly are now. So if we remember that you started as a firefighter and you achieved, and you have lots of really positive, fantastic memories, but it seemed to have given you a foundation for what you're doing now. And tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting way of observing it, because I'm living in Cambodia now, and when I was here for a few years before Firewoman came along, before the book came along, and in that time I was drawn to help out at a local charity, an NGO, which is a fantastic place run by a gentleman who had been part of the Khmer. His family had been killed when the Khmer Rouge came into Cambodia, and then his story is a very typical one here, but it's not one that's really well known outside of the country so much anyway. But essentially, this country, if you want something to happen, you have to kind of do it yourself as a community. And he's very much community leader. He's building schools. He's doing mother and child education. He's every single thing that they can do to make a successful community. And it's usually about 1,000 people in the village at a time. And he's worked over about 26 or 27 villages now. And each one has gone from absolutely nothing, with poverty, terrible, child nutrition rates, awful things happening. And now they're functioning. So he does a 4-year cycle, and it's self-sustainability. And he does, programs to help adults read and write as well, seed funding. And then some of the stuff that we also, he has, somebody suggested he started his own farm. So he grows fruits, vegetables, but he also grows trees. And I sell the saplings out on a Trees of Love project out on Facebook, which is lovely. You know, that's for £10 a tree, and you can have your own tree with a little, you know, sign on it. And then, yeah, so I try to, I'm here for them. I'm not here for them as much as I was, but just getting back into it really. And I've actually also been asked to talk to some girls. I met a lady recently who is doing projects with girls who've been trafficked, and they're doing yoga based projects where they'll take these girls, give them some yoga strength, and then from that they're training them to either be hairdressers or yoga teachers. So yeah, so there's all sorts, it's just that kind of place, you know. It draws lots of interesting people doing, you know, very great projects. And also hopefully I'll be able to get out and write again, you know, hopefully get out as a journalist again.
And the grounding that gave you that, do you think that was
Yes,
your
100%.
fire service?
Yeah, I mean, when I was going out to these places, I was going out to Tacloban after the huge typhoon there to write the stories of the people who were kind of there. And that was very much my fire service. I went into that situation with no fear at all, very comfortable with it. And every time I go anywhere, I just have that grounding. I don't feel worried. I understand what's happening. Yeah, for sure. That is 100% fire service. I love it.
I don't doubt it at all, Josephine. I really don't. So you would encourage young women or middle-aged women or any women to join the fire service because it gives
it's
you
a wonderful
something.
space. Oh, it gives you something you take it with you forever. 100% it does. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully people might log on to you and pay for some trees in Cambodia.
Yeah, that'd be so cool.
For your continued work. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Diane.
You're welcome. You're very welcome.